Hi, welcome back for Chapter 6 of True Colors. My Civil War novel, that again, is narrated by me, no AI voice, no AI text. Just a pure reading of the novel that I wrote and am now narrating. And last chapter, we saw Cassie receive some correspondence from some cousins and from Major Byron again, who again did not ask to see her again and has left her in quite a quandary. But tonight, in Chapter 6, is the night of the big military ball, the gala event with the elite of the military in Washington, and where Cassie is feeling quite out of place and questioning herself whether this was a good decision to agree to go or not. But she's being coaxed by her friend Jeanette, and she does end up going to the ball with Cal. And it turns out to be quite a night on several levels. So let's listen in and see how this goes.
True Colors, Chapter 6. The Borman's carriage driver called for me at 1 o'clock on Friday. The bumpy ride over cobblestone city streets and country roads deeply rutted from recent rains added to the already violent churning in my stomach. I was to spend the afternoon with Jeanette in preparation for the military ball, my first social function since leaving the farm. My mind whirled as profoundly as my stomach when I considered how little I knew of how to conduct myself in such a formal gathering. I questioned more than once if I hadn't made a huge mistake in accepting Lieutenant Thompson's invitation. Mistake? How can you say such a thing? Jeanette chided when I ventured to share my misgivings during the agonizing task of having my hair curled with hot irons and rags by her maid. It's natural to feel a little nervous, my dear, but no sooner will we get you into your gown than you'll see just how readily you fit into the atmosphere of tonight's activities. When at last I did begin to dress, my hair still tied up in rags, I knew beyond a doubt that it had been a delusion to believe that I could comfortably present myself to the military elite of Washington. As my corset was being laced and tightened in the back, I pleaded with Jeanette to offer my regrets to Lieutenant Thompson that I had taken ill, it wouldn't be a lie, and was unable to attend the ball with him. She passed off my plea with a wave of her hand and continued jotting down last-minute directions for table arrangements and instructions for the musicians as her blonde hair was being heated and curled by another servant. I sighed as deeply as was possible within the confines of the snug whalebone corset. As the maid lifted my crinoline from the bed, I stole a glance at myself in the cheval glass of the floor mirror. My eyes popped. Jeanette laughed as I stared at the image that returned my stunned countenance. "Haven't you ever worn a corset before?" I shook my head, gawking at my sudden curvaceous form. "They do wonders for a woman's figure, don't they?" She came and stood next to me. "And her image of herself, wouldn't you say?" "But that's not me. I mean, it's me, but just rearranged a little, that's all." She tilted the mirror slightly, as if a change in angle would change my perspective. "Oh, Jeanette, this was all a big miss." Over my head came the 26 rows of buckram-covered steel that formed the interlining hoop for my gown. More layers of clothing were added, and I questioned aloud the necessity of each piece as it was fitted into place. The curling rags were removed from my hair, and it was combed into ringlets at the back of my head. Finally, a tidal wave of emerald green satin washed over me. I shifted about in it as it fell in rippling folds over the hoops and was fastened behind me. It was the most elegant dress I had ever seen, let alone worn. The maid grew impatient with me. "Please, miss, I can't be expected to fit this properly if you won't be still." "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to adjust the front." "The front will be perfectly adjusted if you'll just let me get you fastened." I remained still for an unbearably long minute. "There," she patted my shoulders. "Ah, miss, you look so lovely." "But the dress doesn't fit." Jeanette and her maid turned me in a complete circle, studying the gown and me from all sides. "It fits you splendidly," Jeanette insisted. The maid nodded her agreement. No, it's too small. I tugged at the bodice in an attempt to raise the neckline. It's purposefully cut that low. It's the style, Cassie. It's not my style. I resumed my tugging efforts, which proved futile. Jeanette placed her hands on my shoulders and held me at arm's length. Her words were gentle but firm. Cassie, listen to me. I don't mean to sound harsh, but you're not on the farm anymore. You're in the nation's capital, and when you make a decision to take on new challenges, like you did when you came here to work, you must be willing to submit to new proprieties. I'm speaking from experience. When Stephen went to serve in the Crimea, I lived in England for a time. It was hard at first, living in another country, but I had to adjust. You're an intelligent, educated woman, largely due to your own efforts. You have a future here now, Cassie. Leave the farm behind you. I responded with another upward tug on my low-necked bodice. Can't you see the woman you are? She turned me toward the mirror. My image penetrated my eyes as my friend's words penetrated my thoughts. There you stand, looking absolutely stunning. You're finally wearing a dress that does justice to your natural loveliness, and your hair all done up like this. The combined effect gives you an air of refinement that you've always possessed but denied. Jeanette nodded to her maid, who began to weave green and black ribbons through the waves of my upswept hair. As I studied my counterpart in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel a bit like Cinderella. I was wearing an exquisite gown and was on my way to the ball with a handsome prince, or the closest thing to one in present-day Washington. I tugged at my dress one more time, a fruitless effort. Reaching into my bag, I removed a black velvet choker ribbon. A delicate ivory cameo graced the front. Jeanette took notice as I secured the necklace in place. Her admiration of it was obvious. It was my mother's. It complements your ensemble perfectly, Cassie. I couldn't have chosen a nicer accessory myself. Finally fitted into her own royal blue gown, she placed her fingertips on my shoulders, our hoops keeping us quite a distance apart. You look so beautiful, Cassie. Cal will be the proudest man at the ball with you at his side. I took her hands in mine and squeezed them affectionately. Thank you, fairy godmother. Calvin Thompson looked dashing in his dress blue uniform. He hid none of the pleasure he took in seeing me again, and complimented me numerous times as the four of us rode to the ball in the Borman's carriage. I learned more about Cal during the ride to Washington. His Swedish ancestors, he stated with dignity, were among the first permanent settlers in Pennsylvania. His grandfather was one of the original inhabitants of Erie, helping to survey and lay out the town in 1795. His other grandfather had worked there as a shipbuilder, helping to erect many of the ships in Commodore Perry's fleet. Cal had attended the University of Pennsylvania, whose medical school, he emphasized, was the very first in North America. He graduated at the top of his class, and he was in the Phi Beta Kappa fraternity, the first in the U.S. His seemed to be a family who believed in doing things first and doing them best. Not a bad thing necessarily, but I did sense a twinge of that pride again and felt a tad unsettled by it. We were also among the first to arrive at the ball. Jeanette needed to be there early since she was on the greeting committee. As Colonel Borman showed Lieutenant Thompson and me around the palatial hall, I did nothing short of gape at the magnificent crystal chandeliers, the splendid flower arrangements, and the other ostentatious decorations that filled the ballroom. The colonel leaned into me. Careful, or some night flyer is liable to swoop down and soar right into your mouth. It's just that I'd never seen anything so grandiose, garish, ostentatious. You've been attending the common fighting soldier, Cassie, but this aspect of military life will always coexist with the bloody, tragic side. His tone made me realize that he, too, was not entirely comfortable in these surroundings. He and I were more at home, working at the side of a patient with an eviscerating wound. As for Lieutenant Thompson, I had yet to find out. Jeanette remained in the reception line until most of the guests arrived, then joined her husband, Cal, and me at the refreshment table. The men then excused themselves to go speak to colleagues, not wanting to do so earlier, as it would have left me standing alone. Isn't that just like men? Always forming their little circles and ignoring us women. Well, I'll have the musicians start playing a cotillion, so the men will simply have to give up their war talk. She took a sip of punch, then smiled. Cassie, Cal is absolutely bedazzled by you. I knew that inviting you two over last Sunday would lead to greater things. Guests mingled about us, the women all stunningly dressed and the men all in dark blue tunics and trousers, brightly gilded buttons, silk net sashes with silk bullion fringe ends. I had learned early on that the color of their sashes, tunic facings, and trouser seam stripes, and even the design on their buttons, varied according to whether the man was infantry, cavalry, artillery, medical, or a general officer. Rank was distinguished by the number of stars, bars, or wreaths on their collars, and the ornamental gold braid on the sleeves of their tunics. It seemed all ranks and branches were represented here tonight. Colonel Borman appeared beside me. Cassie, how would you like to meet General Finley? Oh, Colonel, you know how honored I would be. Cassie, his wife protested, I thought you were on my side in this. But he's the Surgeon General, Jeanette. Colonel Borman offered me his arm and led me to meet the 64-year-old man who had spent 43 of those years serving in the Army's medical department. He stood talking to Cal and 3 other surgeons. Clement, this is the nurse I was telling you about, Miss Cassandra Golden. Cassie, meet Surgeon General Finley. I curtsied and shook his hand, thrilled at the chance to meet the top-ranking medical officer in the Federal Army. He leaned his head toward Colonel Borman and grinned. Obviously not one of Dorothea's prime choices, eh, Stephen? Not even close, sir. I've heard a lot about you, Miss Golden. I am quick to admit that I was opposed to the idea of female nurses when I took this post, but necessity has reigned. And Stephen tells me your knowledge and efficiency have been invaluable to our wounded and have made his job easier. That's quite a compliment coming from the surgeon in charge of a busy general hospital. Colonel Borman is generous with his praise, sir. The conversation returned to more serious topics. I lost all track of time as I listened in while the 6 men spoke about their surgical experiences, their plans for their hospitals, and the need for field hospitals close to the front lines where the wounded could receive more immediate attention. I was not asked to join in the conversation, of course, but was content to eavesdrop. And the weapons they're using now, one doctor was saying, are a far cry from anything we had in the Mexican War. So are the wounds they leave, stated another. Yes, Cal agreed. The ammunition fired from the newer rifles causes so much more damage than the traditional round balls. Their impact produces such shattering of the bone, and an abdominal hit nearly always proves fatal. If I were in one of those unfortunate soldiers' shoes, I'd much rather look down the barrel of the older muskets. Not necessarily. 6 pairs of questioning eyes turned on me. Only then did I realize the last words spoken had escaped aloud from my mouth. I wished to suck them back in, but I wasn't even breathing. General Finley took a step toward me. You have something to offer, Miss Golden? I looked around at the faces of the curious physicians. Cal's expression was more disconcerting than curious. No, sir. You apparently disagree with Lieutenant Thompson's assessment of the devastation caused by the bullets of the present day? Not entirely, sir. I only take exception to his blanket statement about which bullet it would be preferable to be struck by. I think it rather depends on the area of the wounding. This had commanded the physician's complete attention now. I dared not even look at Cal. "Would you care to explain yourself, Miss Golden?" It was still General Finley speaking. I threw an "Aren't you going to rescue me?" glance at Colonel Borman. He merely crossed his arms and grinned. "Well, sir," I cleared my throat of the sudden spasm that took hold. "The conical-shaped, hollow-based bullet shot from a rifled barrel tends to flatten when it hits bone, and with its increased weight and momentum truly does cause a great comminution, just as Cal stated, and it nearly always perforates the intestine, rendering the wound mortal. The smaller caliber, round mini-ball shot from a smooth-bore musket has been known to merely push the intestine aside, causing less damage and is often surgically repairable. But the opposite can be true in, say, a chest wound. I've seen cases where the round projectile lodged itself, causing severe bruising and laceration to a great portion of the lung, whereas in the case of a number of soldiers I've cared for, the cylindrical slug entered and exited so swiftly that it left behind a rather clean and operable wound. Violins played. Crystal glasses clinked. Merriment from guests all over the room surrounded me. But from the doctors who stood near me, nothing. General Finley came to stand directly in front of me, though his words were for my boss. "Stephen, she's definitely worth the 40 cents a day we pay her." "And then some, sir." He flashed me a proud smile. "Miss Golden," the general said, "I'm glad you're on our side." Jeanette came by and chided her husband for allowing me to be left standing idly by listening to men talk. She especially scolded Cal for not having me out on the dance floor. He smiled and bowed to her. "You're absolutely right, Jeanette. I shall remedy the situation forthwith." Taking my arm, Cal led me toward the dance area, where officers and their ladies swirled in a lively cotillion. But he walked me beyond them. "Where are we going?" We left the ballroom through French doors, Cal having to wrestle with a stuck door handle before we stepped onto a large side porch. He closed the doors behind us and spun toward me. "Just who do you think you are? How dare you meddle in a conversation meant for men alone and physicians alone?" "Cal, do you have any idea what you have just done? You contradicted me in front of my superiors, including my own chief surgeon and the Surgeon General." "I didn't mean to, so why did you?" His fair skin was nearly scarlet and his neck veins enlarged. His glare was glacially cold. "General Finley asked me to explain after you intruded where you didn't belong. Now I look inept to them and my military advancement is in jeopardy. Word had it I was gaining a reputation in Washington and was to rise in rank quicker than any assistant surgeon. That'll never happen now, and I've got you to thank. I doubt this one little... I can't believe this has happened." He began pacing around the porch. "I may not make captain now for a year or more." "It usually takes much longer than that for an assistant surgeon to... I am not other assistant surgeons, Cassandra. I am Calvin Thompson, and I was to be the first." "Why must you always be... Let me tell you something. If I had my way, you and all the other females would be confined to the kitchen and laundry rooms of hospitals. Otherwise you are of no earthly use." I stepped back from him. Was this the same man I met at the Bormans only 5 days earlier? The doors suddenly opened as an officer and his lady stepped onto the porch. Cal grabbed my arm and whisked me inside. "We'll dance now." "I don't want to dance now." "There you are," Jeanette called. "Where have you two sweethearts been hiding? Come, let's join in the dance. We'll follow this last couple." She and Stephen fell in line, and Cal pulled me in behind them. We danced as we circled, Cal feigning a smile as he nodded to other officers. The men moved forward to take a new partner. Cal became Jeanette's partner, and I watched her whisper something close to his ear and smile. My new partner was a nice-looking second lieutenant who incessantly grinned at me. "Lovely evening, isn't it?" Unable to return his cheer, I simply answered, "Quite." A bald, broad-faced lieutenant colonel advanced to me next, and we progressed around the room. As we passed near the main entrance to the hall, I had to suppress the urge to break free of the circle and run out like Cinderella fleeing at midnight. More partners came and went. Would this dance, this night, never end? My next partner came up beside me and took my hand. "You look as if you're having about as much fun tonight as I am, Miss Golden." I looked up at him. "Major Byron, is this not simply the most fun you've had in centuries?" "Well, actually, me too. Perhaps we should get away somewhere together." Then he was gone, having moved forward to Jeanette. His replacement was a smiling officer with a diminutive build. "Lovely evening, isn't it?" I eyed the major, who held Jeanette's hand and danced around her adeptly. "Yes, quite lovely." Cal at last returned to me, and the dance ended. The musicians afforded themselves another break. My eyes sought out Major Byron, but failed to find him. To Jeanette's disappointment, but to my delight, the men again migrated to one end of the room. I was relieved to have distance between Cal and me, especially with Jeanette cooing over us lovebirds. This left the women to congregate together. One exceptionally attractive woman stood out among the rest. She looked to be only about 18 years old. Her stunning scarlet gown had a wide skirt with 5 flounces that fluttered delicately with every movement. Her eyes were dark, her hair raven black. "Who is she?" I asked Jeanette. "I did meet her in the receiving line, but I can't recall her name." "Madeline, wasn't it?" a friend of Jeanette's offered. "Yes, that was it. Mrs. Madeline Byron, I believe." My stomach tumbled. "Byron?" "Yes, she's the wife of that handsome major with the incredible blue eyes. You know, the minute I saw him, it reminded me of when I was in England." I looked again at the beautiful Mrs. Byron and heard little of what Jeanette was saying. Something about a breed of cat, Siamese she called it, she had seen in England with eyes the color of Michael's. Michael's? What right had I to call him by his Christian name? We barely knew each other, and he was married, just as I imagined he might be. But I had been wrong on the other count. Madeline Byron was obviously not the mother of 8 children. I wished again to go home, but there was no chance of that. Skirting away from the throng of women, I returned to the side porch, annoyed with having to contend with the jammed door handle before getting out of that suffocating ballroom. Once outside, I crossed to the marble railing and leaned against it. I glanced up. Even my starry friends let me down that night, hiding behind the cover of clouds. Cal's hurtful words resounded in my brain. "You are of no earthly use." The handsome doctor from Pennsylvania, whom I'd thought to be a prince out of a fairy tale, had proven to be little more than a shallow, strutting peacock. And the thoughtful writer of a touching letter, whom I hadn't been able to get out of my mind all week, had a very young and very beautiful wife. And I, who was I? The French doors opened, and I turned to face the woods, dashing a fallen tear from my cheek. "Miss Golden?" "Major Byron." My heart sank. He stepped to my side. "Is anything wrong?" I forced a smile and looked casually back into the woods. "No, nothing." He rested against the marble railing and studied me. "It really doesn't suit you, you know." I cast him an ill-humored glance. Lying to that soldier at the hospital that night was one thing, but now... I let out a long breath. "I've been insulted enough for one evening, Major. I don't need to stand here while you call me a liar." "So there really is something wrong, then?" I turned and proceeded to re-enter the ballroom. "Would you like me to take you home?" I stopped at the door. Through the glass, I saw Jeanette standing with Cal, her head turning in all directions, presumably looking for me. I came with an escort, Major, and it is only proper that I leave with him, just as you will be leaving with your wife. I pressed down on the door handle. Stuck again. As I struggled with it, the officer came behind me, reached around me, and laid his hand over mine. His breath was warm on my neck. We jointly jiggled the handle, me with growing turbulence. She's not my wife. My heart stilled. I half turned my head toward him, but I heard that she was. They said she was Mrs. Byron. Mrs. Samuel Byron. My cousin Sam is stationed in Baltimore and could not get away, so he asked me to escort Madeline to the ball. She's a brand new military wife and sets great store by such functions and fixings, and would have been terribly disappointed if she had missed this. His hand still covering mine, he forced the handle downward, and this time it gave. The door opened a crack. I lingered a moment, then removed my hand from beneath his. Turning from the door, I stepped past him. He also turned, and I felt his gaze on me. So what happened in there that upset you so? I spoke out of turn, I said, and recounted my conversation with the surgeons and with Cal afterward, all the while unsure of why I was exposing my wounds to a relative stranger. Surely he doesn't believe you meant to embarrass him or to impede his opportunity for promotion. I don't know what he believes. He was so angry. Sounds to me as if he needed to be brought down a couple of notches. You may have done him a favor. He'll never see it that way. So forget him. He moved to my side. Miss Golden, I would be honored if you would allow me... There you are, Cassie. Colonel Borman exited the ballroom and came toward us. We've been looking all over for you. The musicians are about ready to start up again. Cal agreed to let me have the next dance with you. He had been glimpsing Major Byron as he spoke, then turned to him as recognition set in. You're that cretin who was so rude to Cassie at the hospital last week. You stay away from her, Colonel Borman. It's all right. He apologized for that, more than once. Though appearing not entirely satisfied, he said, Very well, then. Now, may I have the honor of this dance with my very favorite nurse? He offered me his arm. I accepted it, but stood facing the Major, who took my other hand and raised it to his lips in a most gentle motion, his head lowered to kiss it, his eyes never leaving mine. After saying good night, I re-entered the ballroom with the surgeon. Are you sure he wasn't bothering you, Cassie? Quite sure. He really has been most penitent for the things he said that day at the hospital when he came to... Oh, my goodness. What is it? I just remembered something. Something I believe that Major should know about. Surely it can wait till after our dance. I smiled at my friend and mentor. Surely it can. It was a lively waltz, and we circled the ballroom several times in a whirl of gaiety. For the first time that night, I was truly having fun. I'm proud of you, Cassie, my partner said as we floated amidst the sea of dress blues and flowing gowns. You spoke well for yourself to General Finley, in spite of all that brass peering down at you, waiting for you to say something whimsical and superficial. And I know you were hoping I'd speak for you, but I had no doubt you could stand your ground. The General was quite impressed. Not everyone was so impressed. When the dance ended, Colonel Borman said he would go find Cal for me. My eyes searched the hall for Major Byron. I found him at the refreshment table speaking to his cousin's wife. Major Byron, please forgive my interrupting, but I need to speak with you. There's something I think you should know about. Ah, Miss Golden, allow me to first introduce you to Mrs. Samuel Byron. Madeline, this is Miss Cassandra Golden. I'm very pleased to meet you, Miss Golden. Michael has just been speaking of you. Our conversation lasted only a few minutes, but I liked Madeline a lot. She was friendly and genuine, though perhaps a bit fanciful. Michael doesn't share my fondness for such events as this. Knowing that, I appreciate all the more his escorting me tonight. Isn't this simply the most fun you've had in centuries? My eyes shot past her to the officer, who sported a knavish smile. At least. Madeline, would you please excuse Miss Golden and me for a moment? Of course, Michael. We walked to a relatively uncrowded corner. I apologize for not mentioning this sooner, Major. I should have told you the night you came for Levitt's effects, but Levitt gave something to me the night he died. His eyes widened. It's a red, leather-bound book. He was afraid to leave it in the storeroom and entrusted it to me. Where is it now? His voice held a measure of urgency. At my home. Is it important? Miss Golden, we must go to your place at once. We can't. I have plans for tonight. Break them. What? I'm sorry to sound coercive. It's urgent that I see that book as soon as possible. Well, I was to spend the night at the Bormans. I could make my excuses, I suppose. I thought for a moment. All right, I'll ask Cal to take me home instead, but not until after the ball. You promised Madeline this night. Though obviously unhappy with the delay, he admitted, You're right, of course. I'll come by after taking her home. You do remember where I live, don't you, Major Byron? His eyes lingered on mine for several heartbeats. I'm not likely to forget, Miss Golden.
Okay, so once again, things didn't go quite the way Cassie had anticipated that they would. It was a roller coaster with some pretty big highs and some pretty major lows. Where she was elevated by the Surgeon General and then cut to the quick by her own date for the ball. Rescued once again and encouraged by Major Byron. And it looks like we're finally going to find out what is with that book. We'll find that out in the next chapter. And if you liked tonight's episode, please click on like, maybe subscribe, and I'll see you next time.